had melted, the water level came up, Florida was covered, and that's it. So I'm not I'm not sure whether we're in global warming per se, as per some of the concerns, or whether this is just a turnaround in the tendency. Because also I have read, and it's supposed to be actually correct, where I sit this morning, there was a block of ice a mile high at one time, 18,000 years ago. So I'm watching, but I don't have direct answers to your question. But I have a hunch, a run through the computer, and you'd find something at this point.
And David, thanks so much for the call. Let's talk to Drew this morning, who has a rose question. Hi, Drew.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a knockout rose that I've had for about 3 years that's really come into its own this year, and I've never cut it off. I'm curious about how high or how short I can take it down.
Okay. Let's start with the fact that I would recommend not doing that right now. My knockouts are in flower, not heavy, but they're still in growth, and I don't want to do anything such as heavy pruning, which can cause them to, at least internally, in cell structure, it can cause them to start to try to regrow. Now, they don't set new flowers at this point, etc., but it's internal. Now, I would say that if you wish to manage them, and I know one of my knockouts is about 3 or so feet tall, I'm probably not going to do anything until spring. However, the one that is indeed 3 foot tall and standing in a bit of a wind whip area, I'm going to just take a piece of binder twine and let's just say gather up the branches so that the plant, if it blows in winter winds, it'll all go one direction or the other instead of being split apart and so on. So that'll be about the only thing I will do now. However, come spring then, you have the option on knockouts to cut them back only to the point of life. Now, let's just take a 2.5 foot long stem and say that because of late growth and a sharp start of winter, the top 6 inches died. I would cut that top off and go 1 inch or so below that to an outside bud as a matter of just cleaning up the plant. Now, if then you wish to get a lower, shrubbier, perhaps more prolific flowering plant, you could go down to probably 5 or 6 inches above the ground, thin out, take out the biggest, oldest stems on that 3-year-old, leave the best 3 to 5, and it sounds like pretty harsh, but 3 to 5 is enough for a good start. Again, try to cut just above a bud that is positioned on the outside of the stem, so it'll start to grow out and away from the plant, and count your job done. I would do that in jacket-type weather in March. Only because I defer. I love gardening. I love all the things it presents to me, but I get tired too. So I tend to quit in the fall before I should. But you have a good hardy plant. I have never mulched mine. They have been injured desperately 2 years ago, but they've come back. Maybe not back to full, but you've got a good plant. I would not do anything right now. You could trim to get the garden cleaned up if you wished, sometime after Thanksgiving, but I'm lazy at that point.
I'm with you. I'll leave it light till spring.
Very good.
And,
thanks for calling, Drew.
Yeah, thanks so much for the call. It's great to hear from you this morning. And again, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. That's our toll-free number. We also had a few email questions sent in this week. Just go to planttalkradio.com and click on the Ask Fred button, or you can email Fred directly, fred@planttalkradio.com. Lauren from Marietta wrote in and said, Fred, I have 3 crepe myrtles in my yard. 2 look fantastic this year, but on one of it, the leaves got red spots and started falling off. But then I saw your eyes twinkle when I read you this next line before the show. It said, I noticed it perked up this fall once the weather turned a little cooler. Is this normal, or does it have a disease? And you were like, aha, it perked up.
It perked up, and that's the key. I'm going to guess that it simply got into a significant stress. And I remember the first time I tried to explain that to a couple of doubters. It happened to be a couple, and I got all done reference a tree talking about stress, and this man who was then much my senior said, son, people get stressed, but what are you trying to make me believe about plants? Well, plants do get stressed. We had, at least here in my backyard, a considerable drought Not to hit the newspapers and so on. The reservoir wasn't dry, but it got downright dry for 6 weeks in my yard this summer, and things went into stress. The alyssum quit blooming. Other things quit setting flower buds and so on. Then we got significant rains. Three, not in a row per se, but in a very short period of time. That started getting the roots back active. The plants came out of what we'll call a semi-dormancy, and kaboom, we're back into it again. So I'm going to bet that one of the 3 crepe myrtle is in a drier spot, windier spot, sunnier spot, or maybe all of the above, and it just simply went into stress. The red spots you speak of could be a disease. However, you don't speak, you didn't write in about it having a brown center or it's starting to grow and expand up the veins. That would tend to indicate that it was not a disease, just simply cell death because of stress. Water moving through the plant was limited. It just didn't get to all parts of the leaf, and they quit. But the key probably is that all you need to do is water that plant 2 or 3 times before we go into winter. Significant, and by winter I'm talking Christmas time. Water, if rain doesn't take care of it, water at least 2 to 3 times heavily between now and then, so the plants, all 3 of them, go into their rest period with good moist root system. They're probably already recovering, and I would say it was a temporary problem. So let's hope I'm right.
And we also had a question from Hank, who is in Elyria. And he says, what's the best timing for putting out my tulip bulbs, and is there any way to keep the critters from eating them? I lose about half of them every year. Well, that sounds familiar, I'll tell you, yeah.
Very familiar, and I'm laughing only because in my mind there's a sharp line of demarcation about what you can do, is whether you live inside or outside the city. But let's just leave that alone. Now, first of all, I have attended a good number of lectures on plants, including bulbs, because I'm very interested in bulbs and what they will do for us. It is a little too soon, in my opinion, right now, based on my experience and some of the talks I've heard. But I would want to get the bulbs in the ground by the end of this month for sure, even maybe starting, and it's coming right up on that, starting the 15th. Because what bulbs do when you plant them is the bulb itself stays dormant. However, the plate that they sit on, that little thick spot, is actually the root system that's dormant. When you plant the bulb down, a tulip down, let's just say 6 inches, it gets into cool, moist soil, and the roots will start to grow, enough to call it locking in that bulb and get a start on spring. Now then, let's just take a dozen bulbs and say you want to spread them out over a 2-foot circle, 3-foot circle. There's where you would prepare the area or do individual holes, whichever. Plant the bulbs and then lay a piece of chicken wire or better, hardware cloth over the top of that, put some mulch on the top of that, and then in fact, let that extend out at least 6 inches beyond where the bulbs are, so the critters have to dig down sideways because they can smell it. Now, the next step is we have talked recently, a matter of fact, for the last couple of years, about a product called Repelzol. Repelzol, you can actually powder the bulbs with, or one of the other things is you put the powder in a bag, put the bulbs in with it, shake it up, and drop them in the ground. That will help reduce the smell of the bulb, I'm told, and then if the critter gets to it, they don't like the taste of it. So both ways, and or wire, and you probably are going to stop the critters. Get the bulbs in, mid this month on toward Thanksgiving, and all should be well.
And if you miss one of our programs, you can always listen to it again on our website, planttalkradio.com, or you can go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. We not only do the entire shows, but we have some podcast extras during the week as well. More from Fred coming up next on Plant Talk. Stick around.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Walk amidst tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Mark News here alongside Fred Hauer, the Ohio nurseryman. Fred, our friend Olga's on the line with us. Hi, Olga.
Good morning. How you all doing?
We're doing fine, Olga. I was thinking I hadn't heard your voice in a while, and here you are.
I have two questions.
Okay.
Is it okay to repot house plants now?
Well, yes. Now, I put it that way with a little hesitation. Then I know that you're an avid gardener. You will indeed then straighten out the roots and put the right soil in and water and all that kind of thing. And therefore, I think it would be fine. For those not as adept, they might want to wait until mid-March and get right into the beginning of the indoor and then outdoor growing season. But I have done this, as a matter of fact, just a week and a half ago. I moved some things from pot to pot. One, I increased the size of the pot, and two, I didn't like the pot, so I changed it. And the plant is still sitting, I'll call it dormant, doesn't seem to be having any problem with my having disturbed it, because I put it where, first of all, I did the right materials, and I watered it thoroughly and let it run out the bottom, and then did it again. So it got off to a start without losing much root, I hope, other than what I cut off. And then I've put it where there is good ambient light. This time of year, of course, the sun's very much to the south, a little less intense and so on. So put it right beside a window, which gets maybe afternoon or morning sun, not necessarily in the direct sun, so that it can have enough energy from sun to make to make food so that the roots and tops can grow. So I think you can go right ahead and do so. Unless it's a great big plant that is, let's just say puny in the first place, I think I'd wait until late winter.
Well, my amaryllis are root-bound,
okay.
So I want to combine them in a big pot.
Okay.
I've got too many.
Okay.
Can I cut some of those roots?
Well, the answer is yes, and I can't tell you how much, but let's go with the same percentages that I use discussing the pruning of the top of a plant or shrub. Stay with 25%, just your best judgment on what's 25%. You can either remove some roots or, depending on how fleshy they are, if there are subdivided roots and so on, you can, shall I say, directionally prune them. You can break up that crust of roots that's right along the outside of the pot, or the outside of the root mass within the pot if it has started to circle. You can do that either gracefully or otherwise. I have done both. I use a box knife, and the depth of the cut on that is about 3/8 of an inch. I just start at the top of the pot, the top of the root mass after I've brought it out, and slice straight to the bottom every 3 inches or so, knowing that I'm cutting some roots and not particularly caring, because I have found that is not enough to kill the plant, but it allows new roots to grow and just shove the old ones out of the way. So you have several options on that.
Okay, my other question is it best to remove the hay? My brother planted grass seed, and it's already come up, and he didn't know which would be best, to leave the hay or take it out.
Okay. It will depend entirely on how thick he put it down and how much the wind has blown it so that it's heavy and light in spots. Now, let me try to build you a word picture. When you get done strawing or haying the area that you put seed down in, if you look down at your toes, you should see, theoretically, straw 3 to 5 pieces deep. You should be able to see them separated to where you can see soil down between the straw sticks. When you look out 15 feet away, you see just nothing but straw. That tells me that you have put it on about the right depth. Then, if the wind has caused it to coalesce here, there, in the next place, I would break that up a little bit to allow more light and so on. But most straw, if it isn't too deep in the first place, can just deteriorate on the spot. So hopefully you can use my loose recommendation to know what to do, and it probably will vary within the seeded area.
And thanks so much for the call, Olga. Nice to hear from her again. Once again, our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. Hilda's on the line, and she'll be up